Welcome back to my Beatrice YouTube channel. Today's class we'll learn how to make this beautiful stylish flounce sleeve on a mesh. It's a very simple tutorial and it's beginner friendly. If this is something you would like to learn, kindly stay tuned to the end of this tutorial. Thank you. Okay, so for this tutorial I have my basic sleeve drafted. It's a long sleeve, totally up to you, depends on where you want your sleeve to stop. So I have about 24 inches for the length of this sleeve, and then it is cut on fold like this. So when you open it up, you have your complete sleeve like this. So for this sleeve, you should be sure that you have drafted your actual sleeve length, because for me, I don't want to have any seam on the underarm area. So this is the underarm of the sleeve. I don't want to have any seam line there. But if you know you are not sure if this is your exact size and you don't mind having any seam line there, then you can just leave it as it is. But for me, I want to close this underarm. So to close this now, I'm going to open it on this upper part. So before you open this part, you should be sure that that is where you want your flounce to go through. For me, this flounce is going to go through this center part. So for it to go through it, I need to open it up because I want it suspended in between the two sides of the sleeve. So now I'm opening it on this upper part, and that's going to enable me to close the underarm seam that I have. So once I open it like that, I'm going to bring this together now, and then I'm going to hold it with my masking tape before I go ahead to cut it on my fabric. So holding it together now means that I no longer have any seam on that area. The only seam that I'm going to be having is going to be on the upper part. This is actually not compulsory, but that is what I want. So this is now my new sleeve. Now I'm going to bring this now and cut it on my fabric. By the way, the fabric I'm working with is a skin tone mesh. So you just need to make sure that the color that you go for is the exact color of the person you are making this for. So this is the mesh that I'm going for. So this is going to be for the main sleeve, and then I'm using this satin fabric, this gold satin fabric, for the other pattern on the sleeve. So now this pattern that I have here now, I'm just going to open up my sleeve like this, and then I'm going to cut it. So you can put it on fold before you cut it. So when you're putting it on fold, it means that this underarm area is what is going to be on fold like this for you to be able to cut. I hope you understand that. So now I'll put my fabric on fold and cut this so that we can continue. Okay, so I've gone ahead to place it on it now, and then I've cut it. I already have allowances on this. That's why I do not have the half I need to sew it back. So if you don't have on your pattern, you need to add allowance. So now when I open it, you can see that the underarm now is closed. Okay, so this is what the sleeve is now looking like. The next thing now is to start cutting the design that you want. So now for the main body, there are two designs there. So here I'm going to measure the distance that I want between each of these designs, and then how wide you want it to be. So I want mine to be around 4 inches wide. So I'll bring in my fabric now, and then I'll measure the 4 inches. Okay, so you can also use your basic sleeve here, your pattern. So I'm going to use the pattern so that we can see the markings I'm making. So the first design, I want it to start around my elbow area. For me, the elbow is around 11 inches. So this is 11 inches. So I want the width of this design to be around 3 to 4 inches. So if I'm working with 3 inches, it means the first one is going to be on this line. So it's going to be here, and then I'm going to be leaving another space of around 1 inch or 2 inches or 1.5 inches, and then the next one is going to follow. So the next one can be shorter, or it can also be the same on the same line. So if I'm leaving 2 inches space, I'll leave it like this, and then I'll measure another 3 inches like this. So this is going to be the next design. So you can actually cut this out now to cut it on your fabric, and when you're cutting it on your fabric, you make sure that your fabric is on fold. Okay, so now I'll take this now and cut it out. So when I'm cutting this, I'll make sure that I put this on fold and then I'm going to use it to turn out each other. I don't know if you understand. You can also add interfacing to this, but this is quite strong, so I don't need to put interfacing. So I'll cut this now and bring it back to show us. This I put my fabric on fold by 4 inches. Okay, so I'm using 4 inches, then I sew like quarter of an inch, so I will left with 3.75, and then I sew it. So after sewing it now, I'm going to turn it to the right side. Sorry. So now after turning it to the right side, I'm going to go ahead and give it a good press, and then I'm going to sew it at that point. So just like I explained here, but in this case, remember this is my elbow point, so I'm changing the placement. So from here to here is my elbow, and we have two designs. So the first one, I'm going to make it to the right, like to the upper part like this. It's going to start from like 4 inches above the elbow point. So let me just use the other side. So here is my elbow, which is around 11-12 inches. So this is my elbow point. So the first design, that's 3.75. I'll measure 3.75 upwards like this, and then I'm going to place it from here to my elbow point. That's where I'll place my first design. Then the second design, I'll measure like 2 to 3 inches apart. Okay, so let's say I'm using 2.5 inches, then I'm going to measure 2.5 inches. Then from here, I'm going to place the second design, which is also 3.75, which is around here. So the first design is going to be here, and the other one is going to be here, and then they'll have this space in between. So it's totally up to you and the arrangements you wish to go for. So this is what I have now. So you're just going to, I'm going to open my design up like this, and then place it on the provided space, and then I'm going to sew it down on both sides like this. I hope you understand that. So I'll go over to my sewing machine now and do that. Before you sew it, you need to iron it flat. You can also add interface, maybe a soft gum stay, if you know that your fabric is not strong enough. So on the fabric now, all you just need to do is to notch that part where you're going to be placing it. So after putting it on fold, I just use the paper so that we can see what I'm doing very well. So after putting it on fold now, I'm going to measure from here to my elbow. So from here now to the elbow is 12 inches, like I said. So here now I'm going to pick it up, and then I'm going to notch it, and because it's on fold, it's going to work for both sides. I'm notching the two sides together. So from that notch that I placed there, I'll measure upwards like this, and then place the next one, that's 3.75. I'll notch it also. Then from the elbow again, I'm going to measure 2 inches, that's the space in between, and then I'm going to place the other one. So basically that's what I'm doing. Okay, so just like I was explaining, I've gone ahead to iron it, and then I've placed it here. So this is the elbow, I placed it. Then in between, when I placed my fabric, I realized 2 inches was small, so I increased the space to 3 inches, and then from that 3 inches I placed the other pattern, and then I pinned it. So now I'll take it to the sewing machine and sew it on both sides. So I've gone ahead to sew it. Now I'm going to remove my pins, and then I'm going to trim off the excess that I may have on this side. So now to cover this seam line, although the seam line is not bad, so if you want to cover it like me, I have this gold trimming. I'm just going to put the trimming on fold like this, and then I'm going to sew it on those edges where I have the seam line. So that is also going to beautify it more. So now I'm turning it to the right side to trim off the excess fabric that I have on both sides. So now this is what we'll have. The next thing now is to measure for our flounce. So for my flounce, it's going to come from the hem like this, or wherever it is you want to come from. Then when it gets to the cap here, then I'm going to take it to the side by just 4 or 5 inches. So now I'm going to measure, I need around 29 to 30 inches for the length of the flounce. So just like we cut our normal flounce, I'm going to be using the spiral method to cut this. Okay, so I have this pattern already. I'm just going to follow it. I have several tutorials on how you can cut your flounce using this spiral method on the channel. I don't want this video to be too long, so I'll just go ahead and cut this using this gold fabric that I use for the design. Okay, so I have my flounce drafted like this. The next thing now is to cut it. So now, because I'm going to be lining it, I placed my lining and my main fabric against each other, right side facing right side. Then I held it with pin so that it will be easy for me to just sew it and turn. So now, after pinning it, I'm going to cut around the markings that I have there, and then I'll take it to the sewing machine and sew. So now, if your fabric is not so strong, you can add maybe a peplum stay or a collar stay to strengthen your fabric. But if you feel your fabric is fine, so for me, I'm just going to be adding a because I don't have peplum stay, so I'm just going to be adding like gum stay to this just to make it stronger. So I'll just fuse it to the lining before sewing it, then I'll turn it and iron. Okay, so for the one that is going to be on the cap area, I don't want it to be this sharp, so here I'm just going to make it into like a slight curve around that area like this, and then I'm going to do something similar to the other hand also. Okay, so for the other hand also, like I was saying, I'm just going to narrow it to this point because I don't want it to be too sharp. Okay, so this is what I have for the lower part. So you can just bring in your sleeve to check what it's going to look like. So now I'm going to start, and by the way, I've started adding my gum stay to it, so it's going to start from here. So if you are okay with the shape that you have, so you can see what we have now, and then it's going to go upwards and then come to the cap area. So now I'll just complete adding my gum stay to this, then I'm going to sew it on the hem, turn it and iron it to show us how we are going to fix this. Okay, so now I've gone ahead to add the design to it, and this is my flounce. I've turned it and then I ironed it flat. So now the next thing is for me to sew it to the sleeve. So to sew it from the sharp end here, I'm going to start like 2 inches because I decided that I don't want it to get to the end point, so I deducted like 4 inches from my initial measurement of 29 inches, so that left me with around 26 inches. So I'm going to pin it to this side now all the way up. Okay, so now I've pinned it up to the end point, to the uppermost point now. So now the excess that I have here, I'm just going to turn it and pin it to the other side of the cap sleeve. So the same way that I've pinned it is how I'm going to sew it. I'll just take it to the sewing machine now and then sew it to the fabric. So this is what I have. You can see that I just continued my pinning to the head of the sleeve. So after sewing it now, I'm going to bring the other end of the sleeve now together, and then I'm going to sew it to it before I turn it out. So I'll go ahead and sew this now and bring it back to show us what we have. Okay, so I've gone ahead to sew it now. You can see I sew it up to here, then I extended the other one to the head of the sleeve. So now the last thing to do now is to close it by sewing this other end to it like this. So I'll just place them against each other, and then I'm going to sew it from the hem upwards. Then after sewing it, I'll turn it out, and then we'll take it to the mannequin to see what it looks like. So you can see how I suspended the flounce in between the 2 ends of the sleeve. Then I'll take it to the sewing machine now, and then I'm going to sew it. Okay, so I've sewn it together, as you can see. So you just need to serge. Okay, so you just need to serge it and make it neat. You can turn it with bias or just weave it, and then we'll turn it out. So when we turn it out, this is what it looks like. So for you to use this method, you should be sure that you are using your exact sleeve measurement. So if you're not sure, you can just open it on the underarm so that you can adjust it easily. But because it's a mesh and I don't want it to be having, because of course whatever it is that you do is going to show because of the nature of the fabric, that's why I don't want too much sewing. That was why I decided to close it on the underarm. So this is the head of our sleeve, and this is what you're going to be sewing to your dress. So now I'll take this to the mannequin so that we'll see what it looks like. This is what the sleeve looks like on the mannequin. You can see that the flounce is continuous from the hem here all the way to the upper part of the sleeves, and then it extends forwards to the front. So you sew this part to your bodies, and then make sure you use a skin tone mesh that is very close to the skin tone, so that it's not going to be obvious that there's a mesh there. And then you can beautify the flounce with bead pearls or whatever it is that you wish to work with. I hope you enjoyed making this tutorial with me. If you enjoyed it, let us know in the comment section. Like, comment and subscribe to our channel, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.